She's laying an egg. Bees are surrounding her as she lays that egg. And she's going to pop out. I'm going to put this honey frame closer to that frame of brood right there. See, you want to manage frames, you want to think through things like that, and not always just follow a formula. Hey guys, David Burns with you today. I'm pumped and excited to be with you for another beekeeping video today. How to find your queen. That is a big issue. A lot of beekeepers struggle with being able to find their queen. Today I'm going to give you 6 tips on how to find your queen. And the last one is how to mark your queen. The reason you need to mark your queen, because sometimes you need to make sure you got the same queen that you started with. That's real important. So let's jump into a hive today, get right started. These tips are going to really help you find your queen faster, make a better inspection. So let's jump into a hive. Tip number 1 is to assess the hive. We're looking at 2 deeps and 2 honey supers. Now, traditionally, we're only going to find the queen down in the brood nest area. We don't really spend a lot of time in the honey supers unless we see the queen is laying in the supers. So this is the first thing we do when we approach a hive, is to say, where am I probably going to have to go to find the queen? So assess the boxes. Tip number 2 is going to require that we take the lid off and start looking at frames. So tip number 2, let's get right into it, is assess the frames. So let's start by looking in the top super to see if it's mainly honey super frames, or do we have some brood up there. So no need to really spend a lot of time if it's all capped over as a honey super. The queen is rarely in a honey super. A lot of these are capped over. This one right here is not capped over. It's on a 9-frame spacer rail. So I think I'm going to be able to pull out this frame right here, pull it up, look for any signs of brood. Don't be distracted by other things. Right now you're looking to find your queen, and that's what your objective is. Of course you want to check for brood while you're here, just make sure she's laying well, but don't get distracted by a lot of other unnecessary things that may come into your view. So here we're taking a look at a frame that has a lot of eggs, a lot of larvae. So this is an ideal frame to begin looking for the queen. So step number 2 is to find a frame that the queen could be on. In this case, look for a frame where the queen could possibly lay eggs, and she may be on that. Here are some young bees that are emerging up out of their cells down there, and that's fun to watch, but we don't have time to do that. I see that little queen cup, but the queen cup is empty, just there for an emergency. But perhaps you can see down inside those cells, you can see the queen has been laying in these cells. Other side, a lot of good looking white pearly larvae, then that's a good indication that it's a good laying queen. We replaced her, if you remember, in a previous video because the other queen did not have a good laying pattern. Now, since we've seen eggs in the super, we're going to have to kind of look at all the frames that could potentially have the queen possibly on the honey super frames. The third thing we want to look for today is a frame with eggs on it. The frame that has the most eggs on it has the most possibility of having the queen on it, especially if the eggs are sticking straight up in the air. This means the queen has just recently laid those. Now you may get lucky and even spot your queen walking around, but who knows? So I do see eggs on this frame. So that's tip number 3. What you want to look for are cells that have eggs in them. If you see cells with eggs, that means the queen has been here. Now these eggs are a couple of 3 days old, even turning into young larvae down in the bottom with a little bit of raw jelly. So she hasn't been here probably today, but she has been in the super, yesterday or the day before. Let's leave that sitting up like that while we continue to look around. So as we get further away from the middle of this super, we're going to run out of brood. Likely the brood is just above the brood nest area down below in the deeps, and the queen happened to go up there just a little bit. So why would I look at that frame? See, it's not a frame of eggs. Could you find the queen on this frame? Yeah, but the chances are about 20%. She doesn't want to spend much time there on this frame of honey and bee bread, unless possibly she's just walking by, right? And that's what the rest of the frames are. So going this way, frames of honey and bee bread. Now, before we get into the fourth tip, let me encourage you guys to please subscribe. Bobblehead David is holding the subscribe sign. It's so important to me that you can subscribe and give my video a thumbs up. Now let's get into tip number 4. This is tip number 4. When you see a frame that potentially has the queen on it, start looking around the edges of the wood. Look at all the bees, about an inch of gap that you want to kind of scan for at a time. And I want you to go clockwise or counterclockwise, but make a circle and work your way into the middle. And the reason I like to start looking at the edge is sometimes the queen's on the edge and she walks around to the other side. So look at the edges of the frame first, and then look all the way, wrap your eyes into the middle, looking at about an inch gap of bees at a time, scanning. Now let's do the edges here. Okay, she's still on the edge. Look at the bottom. Work your way in. I don't see her. Okay, we feel comfortable the queen is not up in this top super, so let's go ahead and take that off. If it's capped over all the way down, that's the middle frame, then we're going to take this super off and go down to our first deep. Okay, so there's not going to be any chance of the queen being in this honey super because it's capped over all the way across. Now we just need to muscle up, take this 40 to 50 pound super off, get to that bottom deep. Here's the cage that we inserted the queen in a recent video, introducing a queen to help improve the brood pattern, and so hopefully that happened. Let's take a look at the deep here, see what we have in here. Yeah, look at that, capped over honey for winter storage. So here's just a frame of bee bread and honey, and the queen is never going to be on there. So here's a frame of some pollen and honey at the top, a little bit of brood, and a little bit of eggs being laid, but not much. But this could potentially have the queen on it. So you want to start around the edges and work your way to the center looking for the queen. Now I'm hoping that a red dot will show up. They could have raised their own queen and killed the queen I gave them. And I see that queen cup, but that's an empty queen cup. So we'll keep looking for our queen in this top deep. So this is a very light frame. It could possibly have eggs, young larvae on it. And so look at this. Do you see the queen that we put in here to improve the brood pattern? So what we want to do, if you don't see that queen, start at the edges looking for the queen at about a 1 inch space, circle like clockwise or counterclockwise. And if you do that, if you start in the wood and work your way in about an inch, make a circle, come back around, you'll pick her up and you can see her. And if she's in the middle, still you want to go for the edges, work your way around, and then you can actually pick her up as you make these kind of a grade. You're going to use this radial searching. She's laying an egg. Bees are surrounding her as she lays that egg. Then she's going to pop out, keep laying eggs. So if you've never seen a queen lay an egg, there you go. That's how she lays eggs. She has a retinue of bees surrounding her, kind of taking care of her, picking up pheromones with their antenna, licking her, and just basically grooming her and taking care of her. Okay, so tip number 5 is to mark her. I told you guys I'd show you how we mark queens, and we're going to do that. Even though this one has a mark, I don't like pink, so we're going to try to see if we can get a little more red color. Now, I created this, and I sold a lot of them, actually. And so what this is, it keeps you from killing bees, obviously, when you want to mark your queen. And you can see I've used it a lot. There's red, white, and blue, so several years I've used this. But the little spacing that I designed goes between frames, so you can put it right here. Don't try to kill, try not to kill any bees. Just set it right there. Find the side that your queen is on your frame. So we'll just take a look. I think she's on, yeah, this side right here. And then you just make this frame rest on that little piece of wood that I designed. All right, so now I'm going to take my gloves off and we're going to mark a queen. At the end of this video, I've got another video I'm going to show you guys after we're done marking this queen. I'm going to show you how you can actually mark a queen easier, and several ways that people mark queens. Some people pick them up by the thorax. I like to pick them up by their wings. But you can see where the queen is. She's over there against the wall. And get my marking pen ready. Getting your marking pen ready is so important. Let me show you about the marking pen. This is tip number 5, by the way. Mark your queen to help you find her in the future. And here's my marking pen. Red is the color for 2023. If you're watching the video when I released it, take your marking pen and just touch the edge of the wood, and you can see it's got plenty of paint. If you touch it and paint bleeds out, you're going to have to dab that until the paint gets thinner on the tip. Now, in this case, I'm going to try to pick her up with my left hand, like this, by her back wings. And then once I have her, I'm going to take, let's see if I can get this in camera. I'm going to let her 2 back legs sort of be like right there. And when the 2 back legs are close together, I'm going to just take my 2 fingers and pinch her 2 back legs between my fingers. Right about, let's see if I can get that just right. I don't want to touch the front leg. Okay, so see, right now I have, let me do this. I have her 2 back legs so she can't spin. Her front legs are used to determine whether she wants to lay a fertilized egg or unfertilized egg. So by holding her by the 2 back legs, she can't spin. Has 2 back legs on one side. Now I'm going to take my marking pen. I broke my arm when I was little, so I can use my left hand also. But what we're going to do now, if it's still in focus, hopefully, is just take and put a little red dot on her thorax. This isn't too heavy with paint, so we don't have to worry about it bleeding out. All right, we got her got some paint dabbed on there really nicely. We're holding her. Now, somebody left a comment in one of my YouTube videos saying, when you hold the queen like this, isn't she going to sting you? I've never been stung by a queen, and I handle them all the time. And I'm letting this paint dry a little bit. I think that's important. And once the paint kind of dries, I'm going to just take her by her 2 wings again, the back part of her wings, and just release her into the hive. So the paint's probably dry enough now to drop her back in there. So what I'll do now is just see if I can pick up the 2 wings like this. And once I have the 2 wings, just take her back gently, set her back down, and now she's walking away. Yeah, look at that, a lot brighter red. That other color was pretty pink, wasn't it? Again, the reason I like to have a queen that is marked is so you know you have the same queen that you started with. Now that might really come into play if you live in a place where bees can replace the queen with an Africanized queen. So you don't want that to happen. And that's why you can know if you still have the same queen. She's right back to work after we picked her up, handled her, marked her. Look at that. She didn't miss a beat. She's back in there, just kind of walking around, taking her sweet time, looking for a cell to lay eggs in. Now, the final tip is the most important, and before we get into it, let me tell you that I live stream every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. I usually have a short little beekeeping lesson, and then I spend the rest of the live stream answering your questions live. So be sure and check out my live stream every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Now, back to the final tip. Okay, the final tip is tip number 6. Tip number 6, and what tip number 6 is, it's all about putting the queen in gently so you don't kill her. Now, she's close to the wood and the edge, so what we want to do is put the frame in when she's more toward the center and away from the wood. Now, if you're in a hurry, you can just either pick her up and put her more in the middle. Looks like she wants to hang out there. So let's see if we can just get her to go. Okay, now she's more in the middle. So what we want to do is keep eyes on her all the way down like this. Now she's not anywhere near the wood edge frame. And we push the frames together gently, and she's safely in there. Now you can remove the little spacer to mark your queen with and put your last frame back in. All right, I'm going to give you a bonus tip, so please pay close attention. Since we know the queen is in between these two frames here, she was on that side, we can safely push all of these frames back that way. That keeps the brood nest where she's laying kind of closer together. Do it gently at first. You're breaking loose propolis, and try not to smash and run over bees when you're doing it. I'm just going side to side. I only have one more frame to put in, and this can be an easy way to do it. I have another way that I'm experimenting and enjoying, and I made a video on that. But for today, we're just going to drop all the frames back tight together in the middle and drop our last frame right there. But wait a minute. Whoa, hold the horses. Here's something I noticed. This frame isn't really drawn out good. I had to put one more frame in, but look at this. They're just starting to draw it out. So what I'm going to do is put this one against the wall, not my original one that I took from the other wall. Let me show you why. Because here's the one I took from the other wall, and it's fully capped over. It's food for the brood. And so I don't want to have one frame here that doesn't really have much in it, and then my honey, I'm going to put this honey frame closer to that frame of brood right there. See, you want to manage frames, you want to think through things like that, and not always just follow a formula. So we're moving that frame of honey closer to the brood nest area, tighten up that gap, move things tight together here, and now we're good to put all the supers back on, starting with the heaviest. Now I'm going to tell you about that tiny little box that can really help you control mites, especially July, August, and September. Here's the video I've made. Follow me over there. I'll see you over there.